With 4 races in the books and the 2026 Cup Series season barely off the ground, a story has exploded out of nowhere that has nothing to do with lap times, pit strategy, or playoff points. It involves a federal lawsuit, an alleged $8 million data theft, one of the most respected crew chiefs in the sport, and a 23-year-old driver from Portage, Michigan who cannot seem to stay out of the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Carson Hocevar's name is everywhere right now, and this time it goes well beyond his aggressive driving style. This is the story of how a bombshell allegation out of Joe Gibbs Racing is sending shockwaves through the entire NASCAR garage, and why the ripple effects could reshape how every team in this sport protects its most valuable competitive secrets. Let's break down exactly what is being alleged, who is at the center of it, what we actually know versus what is still unverified, and why, even at this stage, this story matters far beyond just one driver or one team. Here is what has surfaced. Joe Gibbs Racing has filed a federal lawsuit seeking more than $8 million in damages. The lawsuit centers on allegations of intellectual property theft, specifically that confidential data belonging to JGR was taken from the organization without authorization and allegedly made available to a competing team. The competing team at the center of this narrative is Spire Motorsports, the same organization that fields the number 77 Chevrolet currently driven by Carson Hocevar. The key figure named in the allegations is not Hocevar himself. It is Chris Gabehart, a man who spent years as one of the most well-regarded crew chiefs in the Cup Series garage before being elevated to competition director. Gabehart worked directly with Denny Hamlin on the number 11 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota, a pairing that earned serious respect across the sport. According to the allegations, Gabehart left JGR and allegedly took proprietary information with him. Information that sources describe as captured via cell phone photos of confidential JGR data. Gabehart himself admitted to the court that he did take photographs on his phone of a JGR Excel file and other projects he had played a role in developing, though he insisted a forensic audit proved the information was never shared with any other organization. The lawsuit was assigned to Judge Susan C. Rodriguez in the Western District of North Carolina, and the legal demand reportedly includes not just the $8 million figure, but also an 18-month non-compete clause preventing Gabehart from serving in the same competition director role he held at JGR. Gabehart's attorney, Kerry Davis, has declined to comment. But that is only half the story. Because what makes this allegation so explosive is not just who is named, it is what the data allegedly represents, and why setup information in the next-gen era is worth fighting over in federal court. Here's the context that makes this land harder than it might otherwise. The next-gen car, introduced in the 2022 Cup Series season, fundamentally changed how teams build competitive packages. Everything is more standardized on the surface, the body, the frame, the major components, which means the margins between a championship-caliber team and a midfield team have shifted dramatically toward data, simulation, and setup refinement. In this environment, the setup knowledge accumulated by a top-tier organization like Joe Gibbs Racing, a Toyota powerhouse running 4 cars with a manufacturer deal that represents one of the most significant commitments in American motorsport, is genuinely priceless. It represents years of development, thousands of simulation hours, and the institutional knowledge of some of the sharpest engineering minds in the sport. For a team like Spire Motorsports, which competes as a Chevrolet-aligned operation with Hendrick engine support, the gap between their resources and JGR's is substantial. Spire has made real operational progress. Their pit stop performance has reportedly reached a top 15 average in 2026, which is a meaningful improvement. But chassis setup development remains a known weakness. Industry observers have noted for years that Spire's competitive ceiling is limited by the gap between their engineering infrastructure and what the elite organizations bring to each track. If setup data from JGR could close any portion of that gap, the competitive value would be enormous. That is the logic underpinning why this story caught fire so quickly, and why the $8 million figure is being treated as plausible. Now here is where Carson Hocevar enters the picture more directly. His name is attached to this story not because he is named in the lawsuit allegations as a participant in any theft. Based on available sourcing, he is not. His connection is circumstantial but unavoidable. He drives for Spire Motorsports. He is, in effect, one of the primary beneficiaries if Spire's competitive performance improves. And he has been one of the most polarizing young drivers in the Cup Series over the past 2 years, which means his name draws attention in ways that a quieter driver's would not. Hocevar is 23 years old. He built his reputation across multiple Truck Series seasons, accumulating 5 wins and reaching the championship 4 in 2023 before making his full-time Cup Series debut. That transition to the Cup level generated genuine excitement about his ceiling, and in 2024, he earned the Cup Series Rookie of the Year award, but consistent results have been harder to come by. In Cup Series competition, he has yet to reach victory lane. Though he has shown real speed, his best finishes are a pair of second-place results achieved at Atlanta and Nashville during the 2025 season. And then, there is the off-track baggage. Hocevar was fined and disciplined by Spire in June of 2025 after making derogatory comments about Mexico City ahead of that race weekend. That incident drew a formal response from the team and official action from NASCAR. He has also been involved in on-track confrontations with multiple drivers, and his response to criticism has been unapologetic. His own quote captures the attitude, "I just race how I want to race. We have a whole team and company that has rallied behind how we want to approach the racetrack." That confidence bordering on defiance posture has made him a lightning rod, and when a scandal breaks around his team, his name becomes the headline. And then came the part nobody saw coming, at least not in terms of the public reaction from someone still connected to JGR. Denny Hamlin has allegedly responded to the lawsuit. A quote attributed to Hamlin, "It's awfully disappointing to see," is being referenced, though the full context of that statement has not been independently verified through a primary source. What we know with high confidence is that Hamlin and Gabehart worked together directly on the number 11 Toyota for years. If the allegations against Gabehart are accurate, Hamlin would have more personal insight into the betrayal than almost anyone. His emotional investment in this story, if confirmed, is completely understandable. Gabehart would not have been a background figure in Hamlin's career. He would have been a trusted partner at the highest level of competition. Spire Motorsports has said nothing publicly. Their social media accounts show no statement, no acknowledgement, and no response to the Gabehart allegations as of early March 2026. That silence is conspicuous. When organizations face allegations of this magnitude, silence can read as either strategic legal caution, which is rational, or as an inability to credibly deny the core claims. Joe Gibbs Racing, for their part, did issue a statement following the initial court ruling, expressing that they were pleased with the court's decision to enforce the terms of their contract with Gabehart. The lawsuit was filed February 19, 2026, in the Western District of North Carolina, and is a matter of public record. A hearing took place on February 27th, and Judge Rodriguez issued a ruling shortly thereafter that prevents Gabehart from serving in the competition director role he previously held at JGR. The filing has been confirmed by multiple major outlets, including the Associated Press, ESPN, and Fox Sports. What we are watching now is the early stages of what could become one of the most significant legal disputes in NASCAR's modern history, and the question is how far it goes and what it ultimately reveals. When you look at the standings, you can see why even the verified version of this story changes the conversation around several teams simultaneously. If this lawsuit proceeds and results in a judgment finding that Spire benefited from stolen data, even indirectly, the implications for the organization go far beyond public embarrassment. Their charter status, their sponsor relationships, and their ability to attract talent all depend on how the organization is perceived within the garage. Spire expanded to 3 full-time Cup Series entries in 2026, fielding cars for Michael McDowell, Hocevar, and Daniel Suarez. That expansion represents a significant commitment of resources and infrastructure. A federal judgment against the team could complicate every aspect of that operation, from engineering partnerships to manufacturer alignment. For Hocevar personally, the competitive picture remains a challenge. He needs consistent top finishes to stay relevant to the playoff conversation. The Cup Series in 2026 determines its playoff field based purely on points. The top 16 drivers after the regular season qualify for the chase, with the win and you are in rule having been eliminated this year. Right now, his points position is not comfortable, and the pressure on a young driver still establishing himself at the Cup level is real. The broader competitive picture adds another layer. JGR's 4-car Toyota program is running smoothly. Their manufacturer relationship with Toyota is intact. Their engineering program is one of the deepest in the sport, and their drivers are legitimate championship contenders. If the alleged data theft actually occurred and actually benefited a competitor, JGR's legal pursuit of this is not just about money. It is about sending a message to every engineering department in every team garage that competitive intelligence has a price, and that price will be extracted through the courts if necessary. The historical parallel worth mentioning briefly: disputes of this nature have been handled privately in the past, resolved out of court without formal NASCAR intervention. That precedent suggests these situations can sometimes be contained. But the scope of what is alleged here, $8 million, a federal judge, forensic digital evidence, and an already issued court ruling, suggests this one may not be resolved quietly. And that sets up what could be the most consequential weeks of the early 2026 season for reasons that have nothing to do with lap times. Here is what to watch in the coming days and weeks. The first thing that matters is how the legal proceedings develop. The initial ruling is in. What comes next will determine whether this becomes a full trial or whether the parties reach a settlement. Any resolution, in court or out of it, will set a precedent for how teams handle competitive intelligence going forward. The second thing to watch is whether NASCAR intervenes directly. The sanctioning body has jurisdiction over conduct that affects competition. And while data theft is primarily a civil matter between private organizations, NASCAR could invoke its own rule framework if it determines that competitive integrity was compromised. NASCAR's silence so far does not mean they are uninvolved. It may mean they are watching the legal process before deciding whether to act independently. The sanctioning body has historically taken action when team conduct threatens the fairness of competition. The 2013 Richmond race manipulation scandal, in which multiple organizations were found to have deliberately affected chase standings and were subsequently penalized with points deductions and fines, is one of the most dramatic examples on record. The third thing is Hocevar himself. He needs to perform on the track, and he needs to perform now. His zero-win Cup Series career record is a fact that exists entirely independent of this scandal. But in a sport where perception shapes sponsorship, team decisions, and career trajectory, being the name attached to an $8 million federal lawsuit, even tangentially, adds pressure that a young driver does not need. He is signed to Spire on a long-term extension that carries him well into the next decade, so his seat is not immediately at risk. But the long-term ceiling of that seat depends heavily on how Spire emerges from this. Watch for the coming race weekends to bring either further legal developments or the first serious public response from Gabehart's legal team or Spire's organization. When one of those parties speaks on record at length, this story will either become the biggest scandal in NASCAR's recent history or it will clarify itself into something more contained. The 2026 season is 7 months long. What happens in the next several weeks around this story could shape everything that follows.